In the bustling crowd of the international airport, a woman walked with confidence and determination. She was no stranger to flying, holding the role of an aviation safety inspector. But on that day, when she was humiliated at the check-in counter for an unreasonable excuse, no one realized they were facing someone who would not be easily subdued. The events that followed shook the entire airline and left an unforgettable lesson for every passenger. What happened next? How could one person who was treated unfairly bring about change to an entire system? Let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to hit like, share, and follow so you won't miss out on any future stories. Truth or power, which will prevail? Stay tuned to witness the breathtaking moments. Rachel Myers, dressed in an elegant suit, entered the check-in area. With her neatly tied hair and confident stride, she didn't draw much attention, but those with a keen eye could sense the professionalism radiating from her every move. Rachel was a National Aviation Safety Inspector, NASI, responsible for ensuring strict compliance with aviation regulations. She was on her way to attend an aviation safety conference in Liberty City, an important event she couldn't miss. Carrying a small, sleek suitcase in hand, Rachel headed straight to the Eagle Horizon check-in counter. She arrived over an hour before the scheduled departure time, just as she always did, adhering to her meticulous preparation and respect for punctuality. When it was her turn, she smiled politely and handed over her ID along with her booking confirmation to the counter staff. "Good morning," Rachel said, her voice calm but firm. "I'd like to check in for flight EH217 to Liberty City." The agent, a middle-aged woman with a name tag reading Catherine Blake, quickly typed the information into the computer, but after a few seconds her brows furrowed slightly. Catherine typed a few more times, then looked up at Rachel with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, Miss Myers," Catherine said, her voice mechanical. "It seems this flight has been overbooked, and we cannot check you in at this time." Rachel froze for a moment. "But I booked my ticket 2 weeks ago and checked in online. This is a confirmed seat," she said, holding out her phone, which displayed her assigned seat number. 14B. Catherine hesitated as she looked at the screen. After a brief pause, she replied, "I understand, but our system currently cannot accommodate any more passengers. Please wait a moment while I check further." Rachel felt a flicker of frustration rise within her, but she maintained her composure. "Can I speak to a manager?" "I need a clearer explanation." Catherine hesitated again, then reluctantly said, "I'll call the manager." "Please wait in the area over there." Rachel pulled her suitcase to a spot near the boarding gate, her eyes fixed on the check-in counter. While waiting, she observed the steady stream of passengers continuing to check in. 2 white women, seemingly friends, approached the counter without confirmed tickets. Rachel noticed Catherine smiling at them, quickly verifying their information, and then adding them to the passenger list. Rachel's heartbeat quickened. "They don't even have confirmed tickets," she thought, her eyes never leaving the counter. "So why are they being prioritized while I'm not?" A sense of injustice welled up inside her, but Rachel kept her expression neutral. Her professional instincts told her this wasn't just a random mistake. Questions swirled in her mind, but one thing was clear: she couldn't let this go without answers. Rachel stood in the waiting area near the boarding gate, her gaze locked on the check-in counter. Around her, other passengers continued to be served, none of them having to wait like she did. Her thoughts churned, moving from confusion to suspicion. Why were they allowed to board while she was denied? With each passing minute, her frustration grew. A voice from behind snapped Rachel out of her thoughts. "You got bumped too, huh?" A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and business attire chuckled bitterly and shook his head. "This airline is always like this. I've been bumped to another flight before, without so much as an apology." Rachel gave him a slight nod but didn't reply. Instead, she offered a faint, polite smile, concealing her emotions. This wasn't just an administrative error. It felt deeper, something systemic. A few minutes later, a blonde woman in a black suit approached. Samantha Rhodes, the Eagle Horizon manager, walked over with a professional demeanor, but an unmistakable lack of warmth. Rachel could sense the indifference in her every step. "Good morning, Ms. Myers," Samantha began, her tone polite but rigid. "We understand the inconvenience you're experiencing. Our flight was overbooked due to a system error. We're doing everything we can to arrange another flight for you within the next 2 hours. Rachel suppressed a sigh. I can't wait 2 hours, she replied, her voice steady. I have an important meeting in Liberty City this morning. Furthermore, I booked my ticket 2 weeks ago and checked in online. My seat was confirmed. Why am I the one being bumped? Samantha hesitated for a moment, then responded. We prioritize based on check-in time at the airport and ticket class. I understand this isn't ideal, but those are our policies. Rachel didn't miss the way Samantha's eyes avoided hers as she spoke. I checked in online yesterday, and my ticket isn't discounted or standby. Can you explain this more clearly? The atmosphere around the counter grew heavy. A few passengers turned their heads, paying attention to the conversation. Rachel noticed their curious, slightly awkward glances. At the same time, another staff member escorted two white women, whom Rachel had seen earlier, toward the boarding gate. They were smiling brightly as they were processed quickly. Rachel's heart raced. How is it that they, without confirmed tickets, are prioritized for boarding, while I am not? The question echoed in her mind like a challenge. She kept her composure, but couldn't hide the sharpness in her gaze as she looked at Samantha. I need a specific explanation, Rachel said, her voice clearer and more forceful. I just watched two passengers without confirmed tickets being prioritized. What makes them more deserving than me? Samantha flinched slightly but tried to maintain her professional demeanor. We're simply following standard procedures, Ms. Myers. I assure you there's nothing personal about this. Rachel smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. I hope that's the case, she said, her tone sharp as a blade. But I'll be watching this situation very closely. I'm not just a passenger, Samantha. I'm a National Aviation Safety Inspector, and I have the authority to investigate any irregularities in airline policies. Samantha's eyes widened for a moment before she quickly masked her surprise. Ms. Myers, we truly didn't mean to cause you any trouble. I'll do everything I can to resolve this for you. Rachel nodded, saying nothing more. But in her mind, the decision was made. This incident would not be brushed aside. Rachel stood observing the airport with a sharp gaze. The bustling atmosphere of Riverfront International only amplified the simmering sense of injustice within her. She couldn't take her eyes off the check-in counter, where Samantha was quietly conversing with another staff member. Both of their glances flickered toward Rachel before quickly turning away, as though they knew she was watching. We are currently seeking volunteers willing to give up their seats on Flight EH217. Volunteers will receive a voucher courtesy of Eagle Horizon Airlines, the overhead announcement echoed. Rachel frowned. If they were still seeking volunteers, why were they denying boarding to a confirmed passenger like her? She glanced at the electronic information board displaying the seating chart for Flight EH217. It was clear there were at least 3 empty seats in the cabin. With suspicion growing, Rachel approached the boarding gate, where a young employee, seemingly new to the job, was stationed. He hesitated slightly when he saw Rachel approaching. Good afternoon. How can I help you? He asked, his voice tinged with nervousness. Rachel gave a faint smile, her eyes still fixed on the screen. I noticed there are 3 empty seats on this flight. Could you explain why I'm being denied boarding when I have a confirmed ticket? The young employee looked flustered and turned his head toward Samantha, seemingly seeking direction. But Samantha remained at a distance, pretending to be busy with another passenger. Rachel returned to her seat, but the growing certainty that something was amiss gnawed at her. While waiting, she began jotting down notes about everything that had occurred since her arrival at the airport. The time she arrived and checked in, the unreasonable request to wait, the 2 white women who were prioritized, the lack of transparency from manager Samantha. Rachel opened her phone and scrolled through work emails and messages, trying to stay composed. A new message from her colleague, Stephen Hayes, popped up. Rachel, don't forget the meeting in Liberty City is critical. We need the policy report finalized by this afternoon. Everything okay on your end? Rachel replied briefly. Running into some issues, but I'll get there on time. Stay in touch. She sighed, attempting to refocus. But the laughter of the 2 women she had seen earlier echoed nearby, pulling her attention. They were chatting cheerfully as they lined up to board the plane. Rachel clenched her fists, her frustration now transforming into determination. Rachel got up and headed back to the counter, this time not to ask questions, but to demand clarity. She walked straight towards Samantha, intercepting her in the middle of a conversation with another passenger. "Ms. Rhodes," Rachel began, her voice low but firm, "I need an official explanation right now. Why am I, a confirmed ticket holder, being denied boarding while other passengers without confirmed tickets are allowed on the plane?" Samantha's face briefly paled, but she quickly regained her professional demeanor. "Ms. Myers, I've already explained. This is a case of overbooking. We are doing our best to resolve it." Rachel met her gaze directly. "Then what about the 3 empty seats I saw on the flight map? And what is the airline's policy regarding prioritizing confirmed ticket holders? I need you to clarify this immediately." The tension between them was palpable, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. A few began whispering, and Rachel could feel their curious eyes on her. Samantha leaned down to whisper something to a nearby staff member, clearly stalling for time. Rachel pulled out her phone, activated the recording function, and spoke clearly. "I am a National Aviation Safety Inspector. I have the authority to request a detailed explanation from this airline. Any attempt to conceal information will be included in my official report." Rachel's declaration left Samantha momentarily frozen. A few passengers nearby gasped. One of them whispered, "She's an inspector?" "This is serious." Rachel turned and walked away without waiting for a response. She knew she had left an indelible mark, and Samantha would not be able to brush this off. Rachel settled into a chair near the window, observing every detail unfolding around the boarding gate. The atmosphere seemed to thicken as her patience ran thin. Her declaration of being an aviation safety inspector had not only unsettled Samantha Rhodes, but also drawn the attention of several passengers. They now looked at her with a mix of curiosity and respect. Samantha returned to the counter, urgently conferring with the nearby staff. Rachel couldn't make out the conversation, but the furtive glances in her direction told her she had applied significant pressure. She even noticed a man in a pilot's uniform, likely the captain of the flight, approach to join the discussion. With a professional demeanor and serious expression, he nodded at Samantha before quickly heading toward the boarding gate. Rachel decided to stand and approach them. "Ms. Rhodes, I don't intend to drag this out," Rachel said, her voice calm but commanding. "We both know I have the authority to request all information related to this incident. I need to see the passenger list and any details regarding the real reason I was denied boarding." Samantha hesitated, her eyes avoiding Rachel's. "I'll need to contact my supervisor and get back to you. Please bear with us for just a little longer." Rachel crossed her arms and stood near the boarding gate, resolute. She had no intention of letting this issue fade away. A few minutes later, while Samantha was absent, a younger, visibly nervous employee approached Rachel. He glanced around as if afraid someone might see him before speaking quietly. "You're the inspector, right? My name's Chris Nolan, and I work in ground operations. I shouldn't be saying this, but I think you need to know." Rachel frowned, but kept her tone calm. "Go ahead, Chris. I promise your information will remain confidential." Chris lowered his voice, his eyes filled with unease. "I overheard Samantha and some others talking about a priority list. It's not public, but they always prioritize passengers who are considered more profitable, meaning those who fit the image the airline wants to maintain." Rachel felt her blood boil. "And what does that mean, Chris?" Chris looked down, reluctant to say it outright, but finally he admitted, "They often prioritize white passengers, especially those in the loyalty program. Others, particularly passengers of color or those who don't fit the image, are frequently bumped to the standby list, even if they have confirmed tickets." Rachel took a deep breath to steady herself. "Thank you, Chris. This is a serious issue. Can you provide any additional information or evidence?" Chris glanced around again, then gave a small nod. "I have some internal emails I think you should see, but I can't send them directly. I'll forward them to a secure email address." Rachel nodded, expressing her gratitude before Chris returned to his duties. His words didn't just confirm her suspicions. They revealed that this wasn't an isolated incident, but a systemic, covert policy. Samantha returned, her expression tense. She hesitated before saying, "Ms. Myers, we've just received word that another passenger has canceled their seat. We can arrange for you to board now." Rachel tilted her head, her eyes fixed on Samantha. So only after I applied pressure does a seat suddenly become available? And I'm supposed to believe this is purely coincidental? Samantha lowered her gaze, offering no further response. Rachel knew she was trying to pacify the situation without revealing more of the truth. Rachel stepped toward the counter, her eyes scanning the seat map displayed on the screen. The empty seats she had seen earlier were now gone, a clear indication that the data had been altered. Turning back to Samantha, Rachel's voice was icy. Ms. Rhodes, everything I've observed today will be documented in my official report. If there's anything you're trying to hide, I suggest you reconsider before proceeding further. Rachel pulled out her phone and sent an urgent email to her office at NASI, detailing the events of the morning. She also opened her recording app to capture any further conversations. A notification popped up on her screen, a message from Chris. I've sent the internal emails. Hope this helps. Rachel allowed herself a small smile, but her resolve hardened. She knew this was only the first step in a long journey to uncover the truth. Rachel sat in a quiet corner of the waiting area, her gaze fixed on the boarding gate as Flight EH217 prepared for departure. Although she had been informed that she could board, Rachel declined. She needed time to organize her thoughts and review the evidence she had just received from Chris Nolan. This evidence could be the key to exposing an unjust, covert policy. Opening Chris's email on her laptop, Rachel scanned through the attached internal communications from Eagle Horizon Management. The words on the screen made her chest tighten. Ensure that passengers in the priority segment are always accommodated first, even if it requires reassigning other passengers. For high-capacity flights, focus on high-potential customers. If necessary, apply low-priority customer handling processes discreetly to avoid attention. The terms low-priority customers and avoid attention rang alarm bells in Rachel's mind. While the language didn't explicitly mention race, the implications were glaringly obvious. Other emails outlined past instances where passengers who were denied boarding shared a common trait. They weren't frequent flyers or didn't fit the image the airline wanted to project. Rachel picked up her phone and called Stephen Hayes, a trusted colleague at NASI. Stephen, I just received a series of internal emails from Eagle Horizon. We have a major problem here, Rachel said quickly, her eyes glued to the screen. Stephen sighed on the other end of the line. What did you find? These emails imply that the airline is enforcing a priority policy based on demographics. They're not explicit, but the language is vague enough to avoid direct accusations, Rachel explained. Stephen was silent for a moment. This is serious. We'll need to handle this carefully. Send me everything you have. I'll escalate it to the executive board and request an expanded investigation. Rachel ended the call and stared at her laptop screen. She knew this wouldn't be easy. Eagle Horizon was a massive corporation with vast resources. But she also knew she couldn't ignore what she had uncovered. The sense of injustice was unmistakable, and this evidence was the first step in a journey to bring the truth to light. As Rachel continued to take notes, a voice interrupted her. Miss Myers, is that right? Rachel looked up to see a young man in a flight attendant's uniform, his face anxious but determined. I'm Evan Grant, a flight attendant on Flight EH217. I heard about your situation, he said. Rachel nodded. What do you need, Evan? Evan sat down, his eyes darting around as if afraid of being watched. I can't stay silent anymore. I've seen too many passengers treated unfairly, like you. Most don't speak up, but I think you can make a difference. Rachel straightened in her seat. Tell me everything, Evan. What you know could be crucial. Evan explained that there was an unofficial list used to categorize passengers. Those who didn't fit the airline's desired image, often passengers of color or those not in the premium customer group, were labeled as low priority. We're instructed to do whatever it takes to minimize their presence in first class or bump them to later flights, Evan said quietly. Rachel felt anger welling up inside her, but she kept her expression composed. Evan, do you have any documents or evidence to back this up? Evan nodded. I have an email from management saying we must maintain the brand image at all costs. I'll forward it to you, but you have to promise to protect me. I can't afford to lose my job. Rachel placed a reassuring hand on Evan's shoulder. Thank you. I promise I'll do everything I can to protect you. This isn't just a personal issue, it's a systemic problem. I won't let anyone else suffer injustice. As their conversation ended, Rachel's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Be careful. Don't push too far, or there will be consequences. A chill ran down Rachel's spine at the direct threat. Yet instead of fear, it fueled her determination. She saved the message and immediately forwarded it to Stephen to add to the case file. Rachel relocated to a quieter area near the coffee counter, where she could observe the activity around the gate without drawing attention. Her laptop was open, displaying the emails she just received from Evan and Chris. Each line seemed like a direct indictment of the discriminatory system Eagle Horizon had been quietly enforcing. As Rachel scanned through the emails, one message from a regional manager, Nathan Pierce, caught her eye. Ensure that crowded flights don't compromise our brand image. Use a soft screening strategies to retain the most suitable customers. Remember, every decision must be discreet. The words hit Rachel like a hammer. Soft screening strategies was a thinly veiled directive for discrimination, and the insistence on discretion only confirmed the deliberate nature of the policy. Rachel's resolve hardened. The evidence was mounting, and with each new piece, the path forward became clearer. This injustice would not remain in the shadows. The term soft screening was vague, but Rachel knew exactly what it meant. They were covertly categorizing passengers based on undisclosed criteria, systematically excluding those deemed unsuitable. Adding to this was another email from Samantha Rhodes to her team. Remember, flexibility in handling passengers doesn't always mean fairness. The priority is to safeguard profitability. Rachel clenched her fists, feeling the anger rise within her. This wasn't just an administrative oversight. This was systemic discrimination directed from the top. Her phone rang. It was Stephen. Rachel, I just reviewed the emails you sent, Stephen said, his tone grave. We're not just looking at discrimination here. This could be a serious violation of passenger rights laws. I've escalated the information to higher-ups. Rachel nodded, even though Stephen couldn't see her. I thought so too, but I want to ensure we're thorough. These people have the resources to justify or cover up their actions if we don't have airtight evidence. Stephen agreed. You'll need more witnesses. What you have so far is strong, but we'll need additional support from inside the airline. Have you identified anyone else willing to cooperate? Rachel paused to think. I'm working with Evan Grant, a flight attendant. He's willing to provide more information. I'll gather as much as I can and keep you updated. As Rachel ended the call, she noticed Samantha walking toward her. Samantha's gaze was cold, though she attempted to maintain a professional demeanor. Ms. Myers, Samantha began, her voice tightly controlled. I understand you're collecting information regarding how we handle passengers. I must remind you that all internal data belongs to Eagle Horizon. Rachel stood, facing Samantha directly. Ms. Rhodes, I'm fully aware of my rights. As a National Aviation Safety Inspector, I have the authority to collect information related to any actions that may violate FAA regulations or other federal laws. And what I've seen today, along with the evidence I've received, is enough to warrant an official investigation. Samantha's expression briefly faltered, but she quickly masked her reaction. We have nothing to hide. However, I'd advise you to tread carefully with the accusations you're making. Rachel gave a faint, challenging smile. Thank you for the advice. I'll continue doing my job. And if you have anything else to say, you'd better prepare for a full investigation. Samantha stormed off, leaving Rachel standing there, feeling like she had just won a small battle. As Rachel returned to her seat, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. We know what you're doing. Stop now before it's too late. Rachel reread the message. The threat didn't frighten her. It only strengthened her resolve. She took a screenshot of the message and immediately sent it to Stephen with a note. They're threatening me. I won't back down. Evan appeared again shortly after, looking anxious. He sat across from Rachel and slid a small USB drive toward her. This contains some internal reports I downloaded. It'll give you a clearer picture of what's really going on, Evan said in a low voice. Rachel took the USB and nodded in thanks. Evan, you're doing the right thing. I know this isn't easy, but you're helping us bring the truth to light. Evan offered a weak smile. I just hope it all works out. Rachel sat in an airport cafe, her laptop open, reviewing the contents of the USB Evan had provided. The space around her buzzed with the sounds of chatting passengers and boarding announcements, but her focus was entirely on the files in front of her. She opened each file one by one. They included internal reports, passenger analysis charts, and email exchanges between senior management. One particular section caught her attention. Maintain priority for diamond and platinum tier passengers while minimizing risks posed by non-revenue generating groups. Rachel frowned. The term non-revenue generating groups was deliberately vague, but she knew exactly what it implied. Another email from Nathan Pierce, the airline's regional director, provided further clarity. In cases requiring prioritization, consider the passenger's image and influence on the brand. Ensure all decisions are executed discreetly. Rachel continued scanning the analysis charts. Among passengers removed from recent flights, a disproportionate number came from minority communities or weren't members of the airline's loyalty programs. The data didn't lie. This was systemic discrimination. Rachel's phone buzzed. It was Stephen calling. "Rachel, I just received the documents you sent," Stephen said, his voice laced with concern. "We need to act immediately. This evidence is enough to launch a federal investigation." Rachel nodded even though Stephen couldn't see her. "I'll gather more testimony from employees. We need to make the case airtight so they can't find a way out of this." "Stephen, I feel like there is something much bigger behind all of this." Stephen agreed. "Be careful. If they've already threatened you, they won't hesitate to do something more dangerous." Rachel closed her laptop, her eyes fixed on the flight information board. Her flight status had changed to preparing for takeoff, but she had no intention of leaving. Instead, she headed straight to the Eagle Horizon reception desk, where Samantha was engaged in a conversation with another employee. "Samantha Rhodes," Rachel called out firmly, her voice cutting through the busy terminal. Samantha turned, her face flashing with irritation before quickly shifting to a facade of professional composure. "Ms. Myers, how can I assist you?" Rachel walked right up to her without hesitation. "I want to speak directly with Nathan Pierce. Immediately." Samantha gave a tight smile. "Director Pierce doesn't work at this airport. If you'd like, I can pass along your concerns." Rachel locked eyes with Samantha, her gaze sharp as a blade. "I don't think so. What I've uncovered today is enough to bring this issue to federal authorities, but I'm giving you a chance to explain yourselves first." Less than 10 minutes later, Nathan Pierce arrived. A middle-aged man in a well-tailored suit with neatly combed salt and pepper hair. His cold eyes met Rachel's as he approached. "Ms. Myers," Nathan began, his voice calm but tinged with arrogance, "I understand you have some concerns about our operations." Rachel maintained her composure. "My concern isn't personal. It lies in the policies your company is enforcing, a covertly discriminatory policy disguised with vague terms like prioritizing high-potential customers." Nathan smirked slightly. "You're entitled to your interpretation, but I assure you, every decision we make complies with regulations and is free of discrimination." Rachel calmly opened her laptop, pulling up an email from the USB Evan had given her. She turned the screen toward Nathan. "And what about this? Maintain brand image by minimizing risks posed by non-revenue generating groups. What would you call this, if not systemic discrimination?" Nathan's face briefly paled, but he quickly masked his surprise. "This is merely a misinterpreted statement. I'm not responsible for how my employees choose to interpret it." Rachel gave a faint, sardonic smile. "Good, because I'll make sure no one misinterprets it when I forward all of this evidence to federal authorities." Nathan took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "Ms. Myers, you're taking on a major corporation. I suggest you think carefully before taking this too far." Rachel didn't flinch. "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know you can't keep this hidden forever." Nathan turned and walked away, leaving Samantha standing awkwardly in his wake. Rachel watched him go, feeling as though she had scored a significant victory, but she also knew the real battle was just beginning. Rachel stepped out of the Eagle Horizon service area, feeling as though she had just emerged from a small war. Although Nathan Pierce had left, his icy glare and veiled warning lingered in her mind. The threats didn't intimidate her, but they were a clear indication that she was treading on sensitive ground. On a secret Eagle Horizon was desperate to keep buried. As Rachel settled into the waiting area, her phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number. Don't think you'll get away with this. We're watching you. Rachel frowned, her fingers swiftly capturing a screenshot of the message. She immediately forwarded it to Stephen with a note. Another threat. I'm not backing down. Still collecting more evidence. Stephen replied almost instantly. Rachel, be careful. I'm requesting FAA to increase security support for you. Don't go anywhere alone. While Rachel reviewed the documents on her laptop, Evan Grant, the flight attendant who had provided her the USB, walked into the waiting area. He looked worried but resolute as he sat down next to her. Ms. Myers, Evan said quietly, leaning in, I just heard from a colleague that Nathan has already reached out to senior management. They're trying to smooth things over, but I think they're also working to cover everything up. Rachel nodded, maintaining her calm demeanor. I'm not surprised. They'll do whatever it takes to avoid accountability. But we have the evidence, Evan. You've helped me take a huge step forward. Evan sighed. I'm just worried they'll try to pin all of this on lower-level employees, like Samantha, and make it seem like everything was just her personal issue. Rachel thought for a moment. That's very likely, but I'm not stopping at Samantha or Nathan. I'm going all the way to the root of this problem. Rachel opened her laptop, displaying the documents Evan had provided alongside the materials she'd gathered from Chris. She flagged key emails, excerpts implying discrimination, and created a detailed report to send to Stephen. Evan, do you know anyone else at the airline who might be willing to speak out? We need more witnesses, Rachel asked. Evan considered for a moment. There's someone, Linda Parker, in the finance department. She once told me she didn't agree with how the airline handled situations like this. I think she'd talk to you, but you'd need to approach her carefully. Rachel nodded. Thank you, Evan. I'll find a way to reach out to her. As Rachel was strategizing how to approach Linda, Samantha unexpectedly appeared in the waiting area. She looked more anxious than during their previous encounters, and her demeanor seemed to have shifted. Ms. Myers, Samantha said, her voice softer than before. I need to speak with you privately. Rachel stood, observing Samantha for a moment. I'm willing to listen, but you should know I'll be recording everything. Samantha nodded, a flicker of fear crossing her face. I understand. In a smaller lounge, Rachel activated the recording feature on her phone and placed it on the table. Samantha sat across from her, her hands clasped tightly together, looking far less confident than before. Ms. Myers, I was following orders, Samantha began. I'm not the one who makes the policies. Everything I've done was under directives from Nathan and his superiors. Rachel leaned back in her chair. You're saying this wasn't your decision, but part of a systemic policy? Samantha nodded. Yes. They instructed us to use what they called strategic prioritization to protect the airline's profits. Passengers who didn't fit their criteria were moved to standby, even if they had confirmed tickets. Rachel's brow furrowed. And what are these criteria? Samantha sighed. They never explicitly said it, but everyone understood. They prioritize white passengers, those who look like they belong to the middle or upper class. People like you, or others, don't fit their preferred group. Rachel felt anger boiling inside her, but kept her voice steady. Do you have any evidence to back this up? Samantha shook her head. I don't have access to high-level emails, but I know Nathan and the senior regional director, Martin Greaves, are the ones truly behind all of this. Rachel turned off the recording and looked at Samantha. Thank you for telling the truth. I'll include everything you've provided in my report. But be careful. If they find out you've spoken to me, they may retaliate. Samantha gave a weak nod. I know, but I can't stay silent any longer. Rachel left the room, her resolve strengthening. She knew things were nearing a critical point. With Samantha's testimony, the evidence from Evan and Chris, and the internal documents, she now had enough to escalate this investigation to the next level. As Rachel stepped out of the room where she had spoken with Samantha, her grip tightened on the phone that held the recording. Every word of Samantha's confession was like fuel for the fire driving her forward. New names like Martin Greaves were emerging, proving this issue extended far beyond a single airport or a regional manager. It was a powerful network actively working to keep the truth buried. While Rachel was organizing her documents, her phone rang. Stephen's tense voice came through the line. Rachel, I just got a response from higher-ups. They've approved an official investigation into Eagle Horizon. but we need more evidence from the upper leadership. Can you get to Martin Greaves? Rachel frowned. I'm trying. Samantha mentioned him as the one really making these policies. If there's a way to reach him, I'll find it. Stephen paused briefly before continuing. You need to be careful. The threats you've been receiving mean they're watching your every move. I'll contact the FAA to arrange additional security for you. Rachel nodded, thanking Stephen before ending the call. Inside, a mix of determination and apprehension churned. As Rachel reviewed the files again, Evan appeared, his face tense. He handed Rachel a piece of paper with a phone number written on it. Linda Parker, she works in the finance department, Evan whispered. She said she's willing to meet you and share more information, but only under strict confidentiality. Rachel took the note, her eyes lighting up with hope. Thank you, Evan. I'll arrange to meet her right away. Rachel called Linda Parker and set up a meeting at a quiet cafe near the airport. When Linda arrived, she looked nervous but determined, carrying a folder of documents under her arm. Ms. Myers, Linda began, her voice trembling. I've stayed silent for too long, but I can't take it anymore. What Eagle Horizon is doing is wrong. I have documents proving they've manipulated passenger lists to exclude those who don't belong to their preferred customer groups. Rachel leaned forward. How have they been manipulating the lists? Linda opened the folder and pointed to a chart. This is a record of passengers denied boarding over the past 3 months. If you look closely, you'll see that most of the people excluded aren't from the middle or upper class, and the majority are from minority groups. Rachel studied the data, feeling as though she'd uncovered the final piece of a dark puzzle. Martin Greaves and Nathan Pierce are the ones directly issuing these directives. Martin even sent an email instructing us to focus on minimizing the presence of non-potential passengers. It's all disguised under the guise of profit optimization, Linda added, her voice filled with indignation. Rachel took the folder. Linda, what you've provided is critical. I'll make sure it becomes part of the official investigation. But you need to be careful. If they find out you've spoken to me, they may retaliate. Linda nodded, her eyes resolute. I know, but I can't stay silent any longer. As Rachel prepared to leave the cafe, her phone buzzed with an email from Stephen. Rachel, Eagle Horizon just announced they fired Samantha Rhodes and a few other employees. It looks like they're trying to pin the blame on lower-level staff to cover up the bigger issue. We can't let them get away with this. Rachel read the email, anger flaring within her. Blaming Samantha was a textbook corporate strategy. Sacrifice low-level employees to shield upper management. But Rachel knew Samantha hadn't made these decisions. As she stepped out of the cafe, another message from an unknown number appeared. We warned you. Stop now before it's too late. A chill ran down Rachel's spine. She looked around but saw no one suspicious. The message was a stark reminder that she was up against a powerful entity unwilling to back down. Rachel returned to her hotel, where she spent the entire night preparing a detailed report with all the evidence she had gathered. The documents from Linda, Samantha's testimony, and internal data from Evan and Chris combined to form an airtight case. She also sent an email to Stephen. Stephen, I believe we have enough evidence to escalate this to the federal level. Let's prepare to notify the FAA and request a comprehensive investigation. Rachel knew tomorrow would be a long day. She was set to confront Martin Greaves and Eagle Horizon's leadership directly. But she wasn't afraid. Her resolve was unshakable. She was determined to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. Rachel woke earlier than usual. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, but inside her was a storm of determination. She knew today would be decisive. The evidence, testimonies, and countless hours of gathering information had all led to this confrontation with Martin Greaves, one of the top executives at Eagle Horizon. Stephen had contacted Eagle Horizon's leadership, compelling them to arrange a formal meeting to address the allegations. The airline's regional headquarters was housed in a towering glass skyscraper, a symbol of authority and control. Rachel walked into the grand lobby, where every detail was designed to impress. A receptionist guided Rachel and Stephen to a boardroom on the top floor. The expansive space featured sleek leather chairs and a long conference table adorned with Eagle Horizon's logo. Martin Greaves entered the room with an air of cold confidence. He was a tall man with neatly combed silver hair, a perfectly tailored black suit, and piercing eyes sharp as knives. Flanking him were two lawyers, both exuding an icy professionalism. Rachel kept her gaze locked on Martin as he took his seat across from her. "Ms. Myers," Martin began, his voice low and deliberate, "I understand you've raised some serious allegations against Eagle Horizon. We're here to listen, but let me remind you that baseless claims will lead nowhere." Rachel didn't flinch. "Mr. Greaves, I'm not here to make claims. I'm here to present facts. What I've uncovered will prove that Eagle Horizon has been implementing a covert discriminatory policy, one that has harmed the rights of thousands of passengers." Rachel opened her laptop and connected it to the large screen at the front of the boardroom. She began her presentation. Internal emails from Nathan Pierce and Martin Greaves. Rachel displayed excerpts from emails, revealing directives from Martin prioritizing customers who align with the brand image and excluding non-potential passengers. Reports from Linda Parker. Rachel showcased statistical data provided by Linda, highlighting that passengers removed from flights predominantly belonged to minority groups or were not part of the airline's frequent flyer program. Testimonies from Samantha Rhodes and Evan Grant. Rachel played the recording of Samantha's confession, in which she admitted that discriminatory policies were directly enforced under instructions from Nathan and Martin. As the evidence played out on the screen, Rachel's voice remained steady and firm. Every point landed like a blow, and the weight of the truth was undeniable. She could see Martin's confident demeanor begin to crack, though his expression remained carefully composed. The lawyers exchanged glances but said nothing. Rachel paused and looked directly at Martin. "This isn't just about corporate policy, Mr. Greaves. This is about accountability for the passengers who've been wronged and for the system you've perpetuated. The truth will come out and we will ensure justice is served." Martin remained silent throughout Rachel's presentation. When she finished, he leaned back slightly, interlacing his fingers on the table in front of him. "Ms. Myers," he began, his voice so calm it made the air in the room feel suffocating. "I admit these documents appear unfavorable, but you must understand they do not represent the official policies of Eagle Horizon. These are isolated decisions made by certain employees, and we've addressed them by terminating their employment." Rachel kept her expression composed. "Mr. Greaves, you can claim this isn't official policy, but the evidence clearly shows that directives originated from the highest levels of management. If this were just isolated incidents, why do the statistics show such a consistent pattern across the entire system?" Martin's face flickered with unease for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "We will review this issue and make adjustments if necessary. However, I must insist that you cease further investigation. This is damaging our reputation." Stephen interjected. "Mr. Greaves, as a representative of the FAA, we cannot halt an investigation into a matter that so clearly violates federal regulations." Rachel was about to speak when her phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. "Withdraw immediately or there will be consequences." Rachel stared at the screen, a chill running down her spine. The threat had come at the exact moment she was confronting Martin. Someone within the system was monitoring her every move. Rachel lifted her gaze, her eyes sharp as knives. "Mr. Greaves, I will be forwarding all of this evidence to the highest levels of the FAA and requesting a comprehensive investigation. Threats will not deter me, and Eagle Horizon's reputation will mean nothing once the truth is revealed." Martin locked eyes with Rachel, a cold smile playing on his lips. "You think a few documents and testimonies can bring down a corporation like ours? You're playing a dangerous game." Miss Myers. Rachel stood, gathering her materials. "This isn't my game, Mr. Greaves. It's justice, and justice always prevails." Rachel walked out of the boardroom with Stephen immediately following her confrontation with Martin Greaves. Inside her was a mixture of tension and unwavering resolve. She knew she had sparked a major battle with a powerful corporation, one that would not end easily. Threats, resistance, and even danger lay ahead. But Rachel had no choice. She had come too far to turn back now. On her way back to the hotel, Rachel received a notification from Stephen. "Rachel, the FAA has approved the federal investigation request. They'll make an official announcement within 48 hours. We need to be fully prepared." Rachel exhaled deeply, feeling a small wave of relief, but she knew this was only the beginning. She opened her email to draft a final report, consolidating all the evidence she had gathered, from internal emails and witness testimonies to the statistical data Linda had provided. As she typed, another text from an unknown number appeared. Do you think the FAA can protect you forever? We won't stop here. Rachel saved the message, the weight of impending danger pressing on her. But instead of fear, she felt her resolve grow even stronger. The next day, a surprising announcement from Eagle Horizon spread across the media. In their statement, the corporation denied all allegations, claiming it was an internal misunderstanding and that they had terminated those responsible. They emphasized that their policies had always respected diversity and fairness. Reading the statement, Rachel let out a dry laugh. She recognized it as nothing more than a public relations stunt to pacify the public. That afternoon, Evan called Rachel, his voice tense. Rachel, I just got an email from someone in senior management. They're trying to wipe all records of the emails and statistical data. If we don't act fast, they'll destroy the evidence. Rachel responded immediately. Evan, back up every piece of data you have. I'll inform Stephen to get the FAA to secure their entire data system. 2 days later, the FAA officially announced a comprehensive investigation into Eagle Horizon. The media exploded with headlines about the covert discrimination allegations and violations of passenger rights. Rachel became the center of attention, hailed as a trailblazer for exposing the truth. Meanwhile, Martin Greaves maintained his defiant stance, appearing on television programs to deny all accusations. But the pressure of undeniable evidence and public scrutiny had put Eagle Horizon firmly on the defensive. Rachel was invited to a public hearing at FAA headquarters. There, she presented all the evidence she and the witnesses had collected, from internal emails to the testimonies of Samantha, Evan, and Linda. She also directly named Martin Greaves and Nathan Pierce as the key orchestrators behind the discriminatory policies. During the hearing, an unexpected moment occurred when Linda Parker arrived with a new set of documents. She revealed that Martin had deliberately concealed actual revenue figures to justify his unethical prioritization policies. He issued these directives to boost his personal profits through unethical decisions, Linda stated, her voice filled with indignation. For the first time, Martin's usual confident demeanor cracked. The investigation spanned several months, but the final outcome was a major victory. The FAA held Eagle Horizon accountable, enforcing sweeping reforms and levying millions of dollars in fines for passenger rights violations and federal regulation breaches. Nathan Pierce and Martin Greaves were forced to resign and face criminal charges. Though hailed as a hero, Rachel knew this battle wasn't truly over. The aviation industry still had deep-rooted issues requiring systemic reform, and she was well aware that forces resistant to change remained in the shadows. One late afternoon, as Rachel was packing up her documents at the office, she received a text from an unknown number. You won this time, but the game isn't over. Rachel stared at the phone screen for a moment. Then, with a faint smile and unwavering resolve in her eyes, she whispered, Let's see who finishes this game. Turning back to her work, Rachel continued her mission. As Rachel's story unfolds, the battle for truth and justice is far from over. With powerful forces still lurking in the shadows, the stakes have never been higher. Will Rachel's resolve be enough to dismantle a broken system, or will new challenges arise that test her limits like never before? We want to hear your thoughts. What would you do in Rachel's position? Share your perspective in the comments below. And if you're eager to see how this story continues, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Your support is the fuel that keeps us going and helps us bring you more stories of courage, resilience, and the fight for justice. Stay tuned for the next chapter. You won't want to miss it.